All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our session. I see the numbers climbing, already almost at 400. We're really excited to get started with you today for our Watch What Happens Live medical school mock interviews. I'm just going to let the numbers rise a little bit more, but we definitely want to have the majority of folks coming in. Thanks so much for being here. We really appreciate it. My name is Maria Jose Araya. I am the Learner Engagement Manager at the AAMC, and I will be your moderator today. With us on our panel, we have two admissions officers and two medical students. We have Miss Jean Shelton, the Assistant Dean for Admissions at the Thomas F. Frist Junior College of Medicine at Belmont University in Nashville. And we have Dr. Nafis Shamsuddin, interim is Assistant Dean for Admissions and Assistant Clinical Professor at the University of Arizona College of Medicine, Phoenix. Say that 3 times fast. So our students who are here are both M1s at the Frist College of Medicine. We have Bradley Carpenter with us and Dipesh Patel. Thank you all for being here for our session today. We really appreciate that you're here with us for this great session. So we're going to start, before we get into our mock interviews, I would love for Ms. Shelton and Dr. Shamsuddin to talk about the interview process at their institution specifically. And they'll also be sharing some high-level quick tips for anyone considering interviewing. So I'll start with you, Dr. Shamsuddin, if you could talk to us about Arizona.
Yes, I can. Thank you. Thank you for having us. This is exciting to get to talk about this stuff and help students get into medical school. So as was mentioned, I'm the interim assistant dean at the College of Medicine Phoenix at University of Arizona. And I'll just briefly kind of go over our process. So to give some background, we have a couple of steps that precedes our interview process, obviously, as I think most schools do. So we accept, about 6,000 applications, which is dwindled to about 3,000 for secondary applications, which have questions that are specific for our school and our school culture. That group of students is then whittled to about 500 students who get an interview invitation after screening from a panel of faculty, students, and others who look for the attributes that we obviously want in our school. Our process is majority in person. We do 2 virtual sessions per season, but I'll talk more about our general in-person format just because that's probably what most folks will see when they interview here. And so we call them applicant visit days, and they truly are days. They are a morning to afternoon session that is meant to not just interview, but also give the students an opportunity to embrace and get an introduction to our student culture and campus culture here at the University of Arizona, Phoenix. And basically that starts with a couple of brief presentations from myself and my associate dean, Dr. Mira Milas, who are just going to go over some brief overview things about the types of students and the process that we use here to select candidates for matriculation. We get some introductions from our formerly diversity department, but now our Department of Advanced Healthcare Advancement, as well as our curricular deans that talk about our first and second year curriculum. Students then get to go to do their interviews, which is a MMI format, mini interview format, which basically entails 5 scenarios that students are given. They are not privy to those scenarios before they start their interview process. These are conducted by mostly faculty and volunteer physicians in the community. We do have some non-physicians and students that also do some of our interview questions as well. And so we have about 30 individuals that go into each of these days to interview students. We're usually interviewing about 76 students per session, so it's a huge endeavor. And basically each cohort is divided into 5 subgroups, and each of those does the same 5 questions, but they have different stations. And so each student will be paired basically with an initial room, which has a prompt in front of them. That prompt will be revealed to them when designated, and they have about 2 minutes to read the prompt. Each of those prompts is meant to get at several of the attributes that we look for in students. That changes from year to year. The student will then be prompted to enter the room with their interviewer, and that interviewer will know that that student has the question that they have assigned. The student is given some opportunity to answer that prompt in a complete manner. The interviewers are given some follow-up questions if needed to get more information about the student. Once the interview has concluded, which is at 7 minutes, the interview will chime to basically indicate that it's time to move to the next prompt session. Each of our interviewers are given instructions on how to grade each interviewee. And basically it's on a 4-domain scale that looks at different things that we want to see in the answers from our applicants. All of that data goes into a master packet that connects to each student, which at that point will have a complete packet that goes to our admissions committee, which will then deliberate on matriculation.
Thank you so much. We appreciate all of those details into figuring out what happens at a day at Arizona. And now, Ms. Shelton, can you tell us about what happens at your school?
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much. Really exciting and humbling to see that many participants down there in that number. So glad you're all here today. Like Maria said, I'm the assistant dean of admissions. We are a newer medical school, so that is a little bit unique to the Frisk College of Medicine. So Bradley and Depeche are in our inaugural class, our very first class, and we are working on matriculating our second class this year. So we are a new program, which is really exciting. We have brand new facilities located on the beautiful campus of Belmont in Nashville. So lots to do and just a beautiful, beautiful campus. We're really looking for students who are not only academically prepared, but also have a variety of experiences that they bring to the learning environment. And also people we want to be around, people who are not only smart, but good people and people who are doing this for the right reason, and students who can learn and from each other. So we really, one thing when you hear about FCOM, you're going to hear a lot about whole person. We want our students to be able to bring their whole selves to medical school. We know that our patients are hopefully able to bring their whole selves to their physician. So we want to start talking about that. We want to start building that. We want to start getting to know who you are. And our process is really designed to do just that. So our numbers are still really in flux. Last cycle was a unique one in that we opened a little bit late based on our timeline. So this year we received about 3,000 applications. We interviewed about 250 students, and we'll have 54 new students at the end of July. So we are a relatively small program. The biggest we will ever be is 100. So we are ramping up to 54 this class, then 75, then 100, and that's as big as we'll be. So we're still kind of figuring out what those numbers look like, and watching and seeing how that grows and changes over these few first cycles. As an institution, we're really looking for students who embrace that whole person health idea, who really are interested in character formation, knowing their why and holding on to their why throughout medical school, being able to still have that by the time they graduate and have access to and a better understanding of what they need to do for themselves to hold on to that throughout their career. So we really do put that emphasis on our students throughout their time through impact weeks, through different types of pieces of the education. When it comes to that interview day, we are really trying to get to know who you are. We like you on paper. That's always my biggest advice is, you get to that interview and we're just trying to get to know who you are and who we get to have as a student if we get to have you. So I always encourage students as they get nervous to think about that. But our goal on that interview day is to really make the day about you. We know quite a bit. It is a virtual day, So we know a lot about you before you even show up on our Zoom. We do use the preview exam, and I did want to just highlight that as a reminder. That is one thing we see students sometimes missing in the process, but we do require that preview exam, and we think that that gives us some really good information early on in the process about who you are and where your attributes align with ours. So make sure you get that preview taken if you're looking at our school. When it comes to the interview day, once we get down to, you know, like I said, about the 250 we invite to interview, it'll be across about 13 or 14 different days. We interview about 18 students per day. And it is a completely virtual process. About a week before your interview, you will get access to all kinds of information. We know that every med school's website is different, and cumbersome to dig through. So we try to give you a pretty consolidated, here's some links, here's some videos, a video overview from one of our faculty members about our curriculum, a direct link to our virtual tour, information about the support you'll receive, whether that's mental health support, wellness, whatever that may be, tutoring, all of that. We try to give you all of that information in that packet, virtual packet, that you get ahead of time, so that when you come to the interview day, the day can really be about you and you figuring out what's important to you in a medical school, and making sure that you're able to ask those questions and learn what you need to know about us as you're making that decision. So our day is about, like I said, about a half a day. You come in the afternoon to a virtual Zoom session. And we actually spend about the first hour together, just pretty casually. We have one of our associate deans and I greet the group, kind of get to know everybody a little bit, and then we open it up to questions, and we try to reserve about half of that time just for open Q&A. And we know what makes the idea of what a great physician is different to every single applicant. So we want to be able to spend that time hearing those questions of what you're most interested in. You know, if you're looking for a school that has global health opportunities, if you're really interested in working with a pediatric population, whatever that may be, we want to give that time during the interview day to ask those questions. And we actually find that there's a lot of commonalities that pop out during that day. And so you get to see the possibility of who you're going to be learning alongside as well, which is always fun for us to see. After that initial session, we break students into about 3 groups. We do a 30-minute student panel. We do 2 different sets of interviews during the day. So we do a very traditional open file interview, and that's with one of our faculty members, typically somebody on our admissions committee. And that person knows everything about you, and they're able, well, everything that's in your AMCAS application at least. And they're able to ask direct questions there and say, you know, tell me about this experience, or tell me about this grade, or tell me what you learned about yourself with this thing that you listed here. So very traditional, very open file, again, designed to get to know who you are. And then your second interview of the day is we call it a structured interview. And we wanted to do something a little bit different, but something that was really aligned with our attributes. So this is, I call it sometimes MMI light, with the idea that we want to see how you think, how you appraise information, how you approach something that's, you know, a little bit different, a little bit maybe out there a little bit, with the idea of we are a new school, and we want to see how you approach that ambiguity. So we want to see students come into that process, and handle those questions. So that is a completely closed interview. All the interviewer knows about you is your name, and that's you in the Zoom box. They spend about 30 minutes with you. They ask 3 questions. Honestly, nothing you can prepare for. Like I said, the goal is that we get to see how you think and how you handle those questions, and can you approach that. After that, we do a quick wrap up and the interview day is done. So our goal, like I said, is to get to know you. Once we invite you to that interview, we like you. We want to see how you would fit. We want to see you to start picturing yourself as an FCOM student. So my biggest tip is to remember just that and bring as many questions as you can to that interview because you're interviewing the medical school just as much as we're interviewing you.
I really love that final tip. Thank you so much, Ms. Shelton. I am going to make a couple announcements before we move into our really exciting mock interview sessions. So the session recording will be available approximately 24 hours after the live presentation, and you'll be able to see it in the auditorium of the Virtual Affairs platform. If you do have a question for panelists, I see lots of folks have their hands raised. We appreciate your enthusiasm, but we will be taking questions from the Q&A box. So if you have any questions, please submit them through the Q&A box for us to share with panelists when we get to the Q&A session. So I think we're ready for what everyone's here for the mock interviews. Our first interview is going to be Ms. Shelton, who is going to interview Dipesh Patel. And I will go ahead and take it away. Thanks so much.
Neat. Well, Dipesh, thank you for joining us today. I'm glad you're here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, yes. Can you hear me?
Wonderful. Yes, of course. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Can you tell me a little bit about why you're applying to our school here at the First College of Medicine and a little bit about how our institution will help you with your future career goals?
That's a great question. Thank you. So I know that Belmont and FCOM, they're very into research, and as a new medical school, that is one of their goals is to get their students involved in a lot of research. So I have a little bit of background in research as well. So that is one of the things that I really am looking forward to doing in medical school is just getting involved in some sort of lab work or virtual data analysis or just something that gets me going and gets me into the field of medicine.
Oh, all right. Okay, thank you. Can you maybe tell me about a time that you've had a disagreement with a professor or a supervisor, maybe how you handled that and what the outcome was?
So I can tell you about a time I've had a disagreement with the professor. This was over a question that I thought I had answered pretty well, as I had covered all of the aspects that the question was asking about. But the professor did not really agree with me on that point, which we had a little bit of a disagreement with. So after that, I had to have a conversation with them about that because I thought that I had actually done the assignment, but I wanted to know why I was still not doing well. So we had a conversation. We didn't really end up on the same page at the end, but I was able to at least have a conversation with them to understand where they were coming from.
And what was the outcome? Did you get credit for it?
Well, it is always the professor's decision in what the grade is given to a student. And sometimes professors don't really lean towards the student's opinion. But in the end, that was in the past. So now it's just moving forward and building better relationships moving forward.
Great, thank you. All right, our last question for the day. Can you tell me about a recent advancement in medicine or healthcare and why that excites you?
This is a very popular question. So as we have a lot of things happening around us in our country at the moment, you don't really know what's going to happen tomorrow. So that keeps us on our toes all the time. And because of that, I think that basically any advancement should be looked at through a lot of criticism as well as a lot of positivity, because every time you have any sort of advancement, you need to make sure that that is going to produce a positive result towards the larger population. And with my past, like I mentioned, why I'm interested in Belmont is their research aspect. So I did a lot of research in undergrad, and that was dealing with DNA analysis. So every day there's new advancements, and specifically for DNA, there's new things that people are finding out. So just keeping up with all that is very important, and just making sure that you're looking at what the news is saying about all the things that are happening around us in our country.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you both. Ms. Shelton, could you please provide feedback on Depesh's interview?
Yeah. I think as far as the interview goes, and this was the goal, was that Dip gave good answers, but not great ones. He did okay. In our process, he probably would, except for that mission alignment, he would have been an okay interview, right? So if Dip had done his homework about the Frisk College of Medicine, he would have read a lot about people and interacting with patients and others around him. And that first question, when he led off with research, which is wonderful and a part of healthcare and something that we hope our students are interested in. The fact that it was the only thing he brought up showed that perhaps he had not done the investigation or the research into our school that we would have hoped. So it was clear that, you know, he's got the smarts, but maybe not quite the mission alignment that we would like to see. So that kind of started us out on a little of a rocky start. From there, I would say that second question as well was an interesting answer. And as the interviewer, most interviewers are faculty members or you know, involved on the administration side of medical schools. So for Dip to put that all back on the professor and not to own any of the problem, any of the issue, and to almost sound like he was trying to um, school the professor on how he should have been graded and not take any ownership, or you know, a part of the ownership is also a little bit problematic, and we would have probably bumped up against that one as well. But he handled that one again just the way we told him to, just the way he told him to. And then that last one, I'm still not sure Dip knows what I asked, what the question was. He talked, there were words, but as far as actually answering the question, right? If you break this question down, what we were looking for was just the idea that you're immersed in healthcare and medicine, and that you are actually truly interested in it for yourself, not just not just because you should or because it's an assignment put in front of you, but that you are taking that on for your own um, self-directed learning. So the fact that he wasn't able really to give much of an answer and then tried to pull it back to his great research again, which was clearly his narrative is I'm great at the research, didn't quite answer the question. So I would encourage him, if he was prepping, to really take a minute and process through the question before he would respond. But he did a very pleasantly okay job.
Wonderful. And that's kind of where we want to be. Those gray areas is where folks have questions, right? And want to know what's going to make me stand out, and what's that thing that moves me into a space of consideration for a school. Thank you both. We appreciate you. We're going to move on to our second mock interview with Dr. Shamsuddin and Bradley Carpenter. So now you can both take it away. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so Bradley, welcome. I'm excited to interview you today.
So much for having me.
My name is Dr. Shamsuddin. I'm a pulmonary intensivist, and I'm our assistant dean for admissions. So nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. How are you doing today?
Doing amazing. Fostering the next generation of physicians. So So we have three questions for you. I'm going to start with the first one. Please answer as complete as you can. And we'll conclude after the third question, okay?
Okay, great.
So our first question is designed to get a sense of how you will fit in with our school culture and to make sure that also our school is the correct fit for you. Because I think both of those are critical for success in medical school. And so my first question for you is, why are you applying to the College of Medicine Phoenix, and how will our institution help you with your future career goals?
Yeah, that's great. I applied to the University of Arizona College of Medicine because I'm looking for a place where I can grow not only as a physician, but also as a servant leader. So the idea of me leading through service and helping others, what actually stood out to me the most of the University of Arizona was how much it values community partnership. Specifically, I saw your Scrubs Academy. I don't come from a family of a medical in the medical field, so if I had that, I would be have someone help me nourish my healthcare interests would be fantastic. And I feel like at the University of Arizona, I'm able to not only learn but give back to that community, which I'd love to be a part of. Furthermore, I really enjoy your emphasis on team-based learning and using case-based interactions as well as the flipped classroom methods I've seen it's been really important to me. In the long term, I hope to kind of serve in communities where maybe there isn't a great bridge there. And I'm hoping to actually to build those relationships and advocate to maybe those who have never been heard before. I know that the University of Arizona, with the focus on innovation and service, will give me those tools and experiences I need to do it well.
Thank you for that answer. So my next question is meant to foster maybe an understanding about how you deal with problem solving and specifically interpersonal interactions. Obviously, as a physician, it's important to be intelligent and to know medical facts, but ultimately you are a public servant and you work with people. And so having good emotional intelligence and understanding how to troubleshoot difficult situations with other individuals is an important attribute that we think you need to be successful in this field. And so my question for you is, tell me about a time you had a disagreement with a professor or anybody in a supervisory role where you had, some kind of disagreement with that person, and share how you handled it and what was the outcome.
I worked in a healthcare field in Sacramento, California at an FQHC. Every Saturday we had an urgent care. I worked every single Saturday. During that time, the supervisors were on a rotating schedule. So there were small things that came up every single Saturday, but some of the supervisors did not see it because they weren't there every day. At first, there was some small grievances I had, and I spoke to my colleagues about it, but nothing was getting done. So as a team, we came together and wrote down specific problems that we had along with solutions. So I scheduled a meeting with the CEO of our FQHC, and we came in with actionable feedback. And with that, we were able to almost plot out a course of what they do to help us out every Saturday. And what I learned from that whole experience, even though at first it was frustrating, is I learned to address the small issues and provide that actionable feedback. Because in all, the whole point of healthcare is for the patients, and we want to provide the best care. So feedback to the higher ups, they might not see it every single day, but it's very important. And that's something that I learned from, I guess, having arguments with the supervisors.
Thank you for that. And so as we come to our last question here, so as you probably know, and as we believe, medicine is a lifelong learning career. I think it takes a degree of scientific curiosity and just career curiosity to continue to be successful in this field. When things like, the electronic medical record and, difficult patients and long hours are really weighing on you. And so this question is really to get to see if you have curiosity in the field and if this is, truly the field for you. And so tell me about a recent advancement in healthcare medicine, something adjacent that really excited you, and why so?
Of course. So I have a specific interest in HIV patients. The FQHC that I was working at. They were founded on the Ryan White Foundation, and I guess my whole passion was for HIV patients. And when I was working there, they were rolling out Cabenuva injections, and learning the history of the 1980s, where HIV was almost, unfortunately, a death sentence, to now it's a 1 month injectable. To even actually this morning, I was reading an article about in Politico about potentially having an HIV free generation. Was is honestly just incredible, because it's almost been 40 years of hardworking physicians, and also anyone in the medical field's been doing this. To get to maybe a HIV free generation is honestly incredible, and I would love to be a part of that. It does make me nervous about the current climate and regarding research funding, but I feel if we work hard and our voices are heard, we're able to work with those communities and hopefully lead to that HIV free generation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you both. If we could move into the feedback portion for Bradley, that would be great.
Perfect. So Bradley was our excellent example. So he provided, answers that we found to be the ideal answers for the questions that we came up with for this example mock format. And so for him, he generalized all of the general things that we look for in interview answers. And so he showed that he had self-awareness, he was authentic in his responses, he was reflective in each of those. He also showed how his answers aligned with the school vision in multiple examples. And then in each of those examples, he had clarity, structure, and demonstrated that he was an orator or had effective communication. And so first, starting with the first question that was asking, like, why our school and how does our institution fit with your career goals? He was very school specific. So he named specifically programs in our school that he had researched and that fit with his specific career goals or what his value system was. He specifically looked at our school attributes that he like servant leadership and demonstrated how his goals and his value system align with our attributes that we look for in our students. He connected it to his longitudinal goals, which was to work in areas where there's disconnects between needy or disadvantaged populations, and how our programming specifically at our school would help him facilitate those goals. And so he had an excellent answer to that question. His second question, which was to tell us about a scenario where he had a disagreement with a professor and how did he handle it. One, I have to congratulate him on the format. So I think these questions are difficult sometimes because you can get lost in the sauce and really focus on the narrative part of this. And really not get to what the interviewer is trying to get at, which is kind of your critical thinking and your troubleshooting ability. And so he used, whether I know if he knows it or not, the STAR format that we kind of recommend, which is situation, task, action, and result, which gives you kind of a framework for how to answer situational questions in interviewing. And he spent enough time that I understood the basic framework for what the problem was, but most of his time he spent on how he troubleshooted and the value that he felt for the solution that he came up with. And again, he connected those to attributes that our school values, like professionalism, maturity, self-motivation, and emotional intelligence, so that I could see how if this student was to matriculate here, he would be successful in our curriculum. For the third question, this one I think is a curveball. We all talked about this when we came up with this answer, because you may not be a person that's necessarily reading the latest and greatest in healthcare. Thankfully, Bradley did, but I don't think to answer this question really well, you had to know a breakthrough study or something in HIV or something like that. But thankfully for him, he had something right off the top of his head that he could utilize. But again, he connected again to his own internal value system and why this was in alignment with his career goals, which is why it was a good answer. If he had just said something that we all knew was something innovative on television or whatever, but it didn't connect to him, then that comes off almost as generic. And maybe wouldn't have gotten as well of a response from me if it didn't seem personal. So he demonstrated genuine curiosity. This is something he's interested in. This is something that he hopefully hopes to continue to do when he comes to our school. He showed how this was connected to his personal career interests. And he just showed that this, he had a basic understanding, so he could speak intelligently about the subject matter, which shows that he has done the research. This is genuinely something he was interested in, and something that he had been thinking about before I gave him that question. So overall, I'll give him an A+ on his answer, which was the goal here.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you both so much. And thank you to all four of you, especially our actors, our medical students who took time out today to be here and act for our mock interviews. I'm sure you didn't want to have to apply to medical school or interview for medical school yet another time. So there might be some residual feelings about that process, but we appreciate you being here. We are going to get into our Q&A. There's lots of great questions. The first one I will answer is, a lot of folks ask, will there only be 3 questions? Will they always be this short? That was really, things were shortened and condensed for this session. I'm not saying there won't be a school where it wouldn't just be 3 questions, but that was specific to this session. So we make sure that we have time for both mock interviews as well as a Q&A portion, where everyone can respond to the audience. So it could be a longer process. And as it sounds like in Arizona, it's a full day. So you want to make sure to prepare yourself for that. So we've had some questions, and I'm going to direct this to Ms. Shelton about reapplicants and what advice you would have for reapplicants. And I'm assuming not the application process, but the interview process. So you've now interviewed previously, and now you've had to reapply a second time or more. Could you share some advice for them?
Yeah, when it comes to reapplicants, it really does start with, for us, it starts with that the supplemental application. And I think a lot of schools ask on that supplemental application, what's changed? What's new? What have you been up to since the last application? And that's really the place to talk about that growth. Not only that you've done more of the same, but what have you added to that? And we see a lot of students come in and say, well, I kept doing my research in this lab that I've been in for the last 5 years. So I've been doing more of the same and just adding more and more and more, which is part of it, especially if that is a paying gig. We completely get that. But we want to see what is truly new. So when it comes to that interview as well, we want to see not only the experiences that you've had, but how do you approach that interview day? Do you come in and act like you've interviewed before? Or do you still approach it as if this is, something that you are truly invested in? Because that's what we want to see. I'd be ready to discuss in depth what you've learned about yourself in that year. The idea of a potential failure, right, of not getting into medical school. A lot of applicants see that as a failure, which we like to look at as more of a growth point of what can you learn about yourself. Some of my absolutely most amazing students have had that year of, okay, I had to pick myself up, and I know I'm doing it for the right reason now, and I know I'm more connected to my why. I am more passionate. So that's really how I would encourage students to look at a reapplication, is not as a I'm having to do this again, but it's I'm still committed, and here's what you get if you get me, and here's what I've learned about myself, because this is not going to be the only challenge I'm going to face. Oh, so it looks like you're
Yep,
muted
here we
still.
go. Dr. Shamsa Dean, did you want to add anything to what sorry, Ms. Shelton shared?
Yeah, absolutely. For the most part, I would echo all the same points. I want to just to mention that a growing minority of folks are reapplicants. I think something like 30 to 40% of our last applicant pool was reapplicants. So don't let that discourage you from continuing at it and to putting yourself out there again. I would echo Ms. Shelton's points about growth mindedness, as that has to show through in your application on the second attempt for us to really consider it that second time. I think that most of the applications that are getting the water on committee are ones that don't demonstrate that, meaning that they've done the same things and expected for some reason a different result in a different cohort. And so really to do that in supplemental materials, I think I would mention not just what you're doing, but how did that specifically address the deficiencies that you had the first time around? So I noticed that I had a research, gap in my application, or I knew that my GPA wasn't really, solid. I felt like my community service was lacking. Whatever that is for your application, identifying that issue and then specifically connecting that to what you've been spending your time doing in the last year, and then really pulling out those personal things you got from those activities, not just listing them. Aside from that, I think I would basically say most of the same things that Ms. Shelton said.
Great. Thank you so much for adding all of those details. What are some things that applicant or interviewees should consider in the virtual interview space? So specific to virtual interviews that they should keep in mind, tips and tricks that you can assist with to help that go well for them. And I'll start with you, Dr. Shamsi.
Yes. So, it's still a growing and expanding area. Most of us have not been doing virtual interviews longer than, the last 6 or so years since COVID. As I did mention, we do both formats. We do virtual and in person. And I think the considerations are a little bit different. So in the virtual format, there are things that I think you have to make sure you're aware of that, maybe you're not thinking about in the in-person format. So, the fact that someone is watching you when you're not talking on camera. So making sure that you're keeping that professional demeanor, keeping a good bright smile on, keeping eye contact with your interviewer, things like that might not come naturally if you're not used to doing virtual camera interfaces. Making sure that your background is professional. I find that students now have become really savvy at this. They'll put their interests, like they have their guitar hanging in the background or whatever. Be sure to make sure that you read the requirements on each individual school, because some schools require you to have a blank background. They don't want anything in the back, things that won't influence your interviewer. So make sure you understand the rules before you go in. But if they're giving you the opportunity, maybe giving some hints at some of the personal elements about yourself that might prompt conversation during that interaction. Making sure you test all of your equipment beforehand, so that you're not having equipment or technology failures during the interview process, which is always really difficult to troubleshoot in real time. So get on that Zoom or link or whatever, make sure it works, make sure your volume is appropriate, make sure your camera is on, all of those things before you go into your interview. And then, just familiarizing yourself with the platform. So making sure you understand how to unmute yourself, mute yourself. How do you do your background if you're doing a virtual background? How do you change the camera effects? If the lighting's too dim, if your background's backwards and you need to turn it around, all of those things. I make that joke because we had an issue before, but just familiarizing yourself, because each platform has some, idiosyncrasies that you might need to be aware of. That's what I would say.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'll actually also open that question to both students and see what you have to add. Obviously, you've now had a second medical school interview, but now that you are more seasoned in virtual interviewing, do you have any tips to add?
I can start. So one of the big things that would, like Dr. Shamsuddin mentioned, was to make sure that you're composed throughout, because people can see you all the time. Because when in person, you could just do your own thing on the side when someone else is talking. But when you're on the virtual platform, it's you and your face is there the entire time. And I would also say, like, don't try to like leave and then leave your camera on and then come back. Like, if you really have to leave, turn your camera off. Make sure you're on mute. A lot of people forget that they're not on mute. They have side conversations that can potentially be detrimental to later on in your application. But the biggest thing would just be, remember that people can see you at all times. So whatever you do, it will be seen by someone, especially if it is a recorded interview or something like that.
Thank you. Bradley, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I think everyone kind of said it. It's more of those little things or things that we don't think about, as well as maybe some like body movements that some people do. You make sure you like stand up straight and you have it's small little things like that that can make a difference.
Yes, posture is important. Thank you so much. And I love the reminder of, especially if it's recorded, because again, this is that moment in time that can be seen by folks over and over again, and that you will be measured with. Ms. Shelton, we've had some questions about in the current political landscape, especially regarding research and things like that. How can someone answer a question without being too political, but still representing their authentic self? And I feel like I'm putting you on the spot.
Ooh.
If you're able to answer,
I
that'd
feel
be
like I'm
great.
trying to get into med school here.
Hey.
I mean, it is an interesting time to be in this in medicine, in research. This is a time that is new to all of us. So I would encourage you to try to read the room best you can and to stay, I use the word a lot, hopefully vague, if at all possible, of, you know, here's what's important to me. I thought Bradley actually danced very well around skirting that well of, here's what I know as a physician is important. Not necessarily commenting on the world in general, but as a physician, I want my patients to have the best access to the best care. And in order to do that, I know I want them to have the latest and the greatest. And trying to stick with that patient care as your core helps avoid as much as possible. But also, we know that we have students who are interested in advocacy and want to do that. But anytime you bring anything out on an interview, know that you can be challenged. Know that you can get yourself into more sticky, if you will, situations. But you also have to think of the back end of, you want to be at a school that is a good fit for you. So if you do share something, is that school going to be a fit for you as a medical student, as a future physician? So it is a little bit of a balancing act, and I think that that comes back to each applicant making their own choice of what's most important to them, finding a school that's a good fit for them, and everything that they want to do in medicine, and trying to keep that as your own guiding principle. But that is the best I could do on that one at this point. And I think we've all got to kind of hold on to that.
Wonderful. Does anyone else on the panel want to add to that? I know it was a loaded question.
I think, you know, I agree with most of the points that were made. I think it's not a correct answer. It is a read the room answer. I think this is where researching your schools really helps. Knowing about the culture of the school helps. Hopefully, maybe knowing a little bit about some of the faculty that are doing your interview might help. I think that, you know, really going for the fences and really putting yourself out there has rewards, but also has some risks depending on what the personal ideologies of the person interviewing you are. But again, I echo Ms. Shelton's point about, you want a school that fits your personal personality and goals. And so if that is advocacy or whatever it might be, maybe you do want that to be out there so that, a school that doesn't value that or is not going to allow you to, grow in that space, that's maybe not the institutional home for you. I think that if you're trying to play the odds and just get the best outcome, I think sticking to statements that are, universal, kind of like politicians do, all patients deserve, access to fair medical care. We want the medical system to be the best system it can be for all patients, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, things that nobody would disagree with, even though there might be a backdrop or an undertone of something that you believe, but not stating that explicitly so that you aren't judged if maybe that other person across the way has different political ideologies than yourself. That would be my best advice.
Great, thank you. We've had some questions about questions that interviewees should prepare for their interviewers. First question is, should they prepare questions for their interviewers? Yes, everyone's nodding, yes. So we're gonna go with that one. And what are good questions, important questions that they should bring, and should they ask if they have several interviewers, should they ask them all the same question? Dr. Shamsuddin, we'll go with you.
Sure. I think that if you want to wow your interviewer, I think using the information during your session to kind of guide the questions that you ask and make sure that those questions are specific to whatever you've been saying. So if you tell me that you're interested, in our community health program or our summer scrubs program, and none of your questions are about those programs or programs like that, then that kind of is a little disjointed. If you say that you're really interested in, research, but you have no questions about our research curriculum or what research opportunities there are here, that also seems a little disjointed. So I think making sure your questions are connecting to this overall narrative that you're trying to construct for your interviewer is going to be best, as well as, things that are personal to whatever that value system is that you're trying to make sure your interviewer understands, and making sure that that fits with the school culture and school attributes.
Ms. Shelton, did you want to share any additional
Yeah.
responses?
I could not agree more with everything Dr. Shamsuddin said. You want to make sure that your questions are clear, that you've done some homework. We want to see that you've put in that time, and that you care enough before you come to that interview. I always encourage asking the same questions. Not every question, but I do think there's a few questions that are important or to you to try to get different people's responses, right? You want to make sure that the answer you're getting is thorough and full. So I think if you asked Bradley, what's your favorite thing about, the First College of Medicine, you're going to get a different answer than asking Depeche. So things like that, I think it's important to see if you see some commonalities. Look to try to figure those kinds of things out. And then I think it's another way of showcasing what's most important to you, right? I'm really looking for a school that values my mental health, or I'm looking for a school that will support me as I plan to have kids in med school. Is that normal? Is there a support group for my spouse? What does that look like? So trying to pull that back into highlighting not only the school having some of these resources, but what you need in order to be successful in this crazy world of medical education.
Perfect, thank you both. We've had folks ask about how to prepare for an MMI. That can be open to anyone on the panel. So if any of our medical students would like to respond, since they've been through the process as well, that would be great. But if not, Ms. Shelton, is there something you can offer for our?
Yeah, how to prepare for MMIs. There, first and foremost, the WMC has so many amazing free resources, and I would start there. Start watching those videos. There's some amazing videos that the WMC has put together. And I would start there. I would start figuring out what types of questions are possible. look for ways of answering those questions. You can't necessarily know what you're going to be asked, but you can start thinking about, how do I break this down? And after you kind of get the feel of what it's going to feel like, right? Know what the timing looks like at the school, know how many scenarios or sessions you're going to go through, and kind of get that, the logistical side figured out so that you can start putting that together in your head. Um, I would encourage practice questions. You don't want to be scripted, but you do want to start looking at some practice questions, run them. And when I say run them, I don't mean think about it in your head. I mean sit down with a friend, sit down with somebody in your pre-med club, sit down with your pre-health advisor, and actually say the words out loud. I think we all sound perfect in our heads every time, but as soon as you open your mouth, things start to jumble a little bit. So I would think about that. And then I would also always encourage the pause. Take the time, sit with it before you dive in. Whether that's after reading the prompt, whether that's when you're in the room and you're interacting with a simulated patient, whatever it may be, take the pause. We don't expect perfection, but we do want to see that you're being thoughtful and you're being thoughtful and you're being intentional. So it is a-okay to take that pause.
I love that. Thank you for mentioning that about the pause. That's really important. Um, it- we are about 3 minutes from ending our session. It goes so quickly because there's so much going on. But I wanted to make sure that I give each of you a moment to give our audience any parting guidance as they're applying to medical school and going on these interviews. Ms. Shelton, we'll start with you and then we'll move down the line. And thank you all for being here.
I think for me, the biggest thing is to have some fun. You have worked so hard to get to this part of the process. The interviews are really your chance to talk about what lights you up. Talk about what you're most excited about. Bringing yourself to that interview and bringing who you are, why you need to do medical school versus anything else. Practice as much as you can so that you feel confident being yourself, and figure out how to do that, whether that's the mock interviews, something that's really official, or sitting down over coffee with a friend and working it through. But try to have some fun with it. Remember that that's a big part of this process is us getting to know you as a person, not the perfect pre-med version of yourself.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Bradley, can you share some parting words?
Yeah. Probably my best advice in this is to not lose your fire. Because I know during this application process, you might not hear back for a while, or maybe some people, one of your friends hears that they got the interview and you haven't heard anything yet. And it's tough to it feels like your fire is kind of distinguishing. So don't forget your why. Try your best to either, talk to your friends that are in medical or that are interested in medicine, talk to your faculty, just keep that passion alive because eventually you'll get that interview and you'll nail it. So just don't forget the fire.
Love that. Thank you. It's definitely a marathon, not a sprint. Depesh, on to you.
I would say answer why medicine first and use that as a guiding thing for you to, like Bradley said, to keep your fire going, because that why medicine answer is why you want to dedicate the rest of your life into going into this field, because the application is just the surface and it's so much further down the line that it is your life. And going into the interview, pretend like you're a part of that school. Like you're a student there, you're talking to the faculty just as a normal day. You would go in and talk to the faculty. They're asking a few questions. That really helps just bring your confidence up and then brings those nerves and anxiety lower because you're already picturing yourself as a medical student, which will also just automatically make you a little bit happier because that is the end goal of this journey. But good luck, everyone. You got this.
Oh, thank you. That's amazing. All right. And we're going to end it with Dr. Shamsuddin. If you can share any parting words for those in the audience.
Absolutely. Hard to follow all those great answers. I first want to just say thank you to the AMC for putting this together. And this is just exciting seeing that there's 1,200 students on this call that are watching this happen. I just want to encourage all of you guys that we need you. We truly do. And so please don't give up on your dreams, even if that means applying a few times. I think if you really want this, please stay persistent. In terms of advice for interviews in general as we close, I think going in with the appropriate mindset, which is that you're an all-star. You already have gone through so many selection processes to get to that point. If we've selected you as an interview, we already are interested in you. And so come in with that confidence that you already have this gig. If you don't, then it's going to shine through in your answers. You're not going to have as bright of a personality. Your light's going to be dimmer. And those are the things we care about. Remember, we're asking you these questions that do have answers to them, but ultimately we want to know about you, the person, and what motivates you. And as Dipesh said, what is your why for medicine? And so don't get too jumbled up and concerned and anxious about, is my answer the perfect answer? It's the perfect answer for you. And so I think, well, absolutely you want to practice a bunch of different styles of questions and different answers. Having a scripted answer, I think, is probably your worst enemy because you're going to come off robotic. And ultimately, you know, medical school is so competitive now. We need dynamic individuals. And so showing your personality, really putting yourself out there and letting the process do what it does, which is connect you to the school that's going to be the best fit for you, is my best advice for you.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you all so much. We really appreciate you being here today to offer your guidance and your candid guidance, your support, your acting. We really appreciate that you would all be here. Thank you to our audience and their questions. I will remind everyone that the session recording will be available in about 24 hours back on the Virtual Affairs platform. And we hope that you'll join us for our 1:30 session about professionalism faux pas, feedback about applicant mistakes you need to hear from admissions officers. I wish you all a wonderful day and good luck in your process. Thanks so much.